The reviews are in, and the summit between Donald Trump and China's leader Xi Jinping was a huge success for China. Donald Trump's profound political weakness is now on full display for the entire world to see as Donald Trump leaves China largely empty-handed and parroting the talking points of China's authoritarian leadership. During the trip, Donald Trump took to his favorite network, Fox News, for an exercise in flattery.
We have a friendship, really. He's a tremendous leader. He's been here a long time, very powerful, very strong. There's no doubt about it. I say about him that if you went to Hollywood and you looked for a leader of China to play a role in a movie,
central casting.
He's central casting. You couldn't find a guy like him. Even his physical features, he's tall, very tall. I'll get criticized. They always criticize me when I say good things about certain leaders, and this one. But he's a leader for China. He's led almost 1.5 billion people for a long time, and he's respected.
He's respected, and he's so handsome. He looks like he's at essential casting. He's, quote, powerful and strong. 27% of Americans agree with that assessment. 27% of Americans approve of China. But Donald Trump's man crush on Xi is so deeply felt by Donald Trump and now on public display that Trump went beyond complimenting the leader. He even parroted and agreed with Chinese propaganda about the decline of his own country, the United States of America. Donald Trump posted this on social media, quote, when President Xi very elegantly referred to the United States as perhaps being a declining nation, he was referring to the tremendous damage we suffered during the 4 years of Sleepy Joe Biden and the Biden administration. On that score, he was 100% correct, end quote. Trump went on to list a litany of complaints about America and culture war grievances, things Donald Trump has said many times before, but not after being in charge of the country for 18 months. That post appeared to be in response to President Xi referencing the so-called Thucydides trap, a theory in which war erupts when an existing power is threatened by rising power. Instead of defending the United States of America, Donald Trump threw in with China's dictator, agreed with them in his assessment and criticism of his own country, and then tried to spin it away as the result of the policies enacted by his predecessor, who, as we said, has been out of office for a year and a half now. All in all, Donald Trump's post underscored who clearly, undeniably, came out the winner of the summit. On that, David Sanger of the New York Times writes this, quote, Trump sounded conciliatory, the exact opposite of his portrayals of China in public appearances back home. Mr. Xi, while smiling and welcoming to Trump, was quietly more confrontational, especially on Taiwan, where he delivered an unequivocal warning. The gap spoke directly to the new level of confidence and authority Mr. Xi has adopted in his public speech, despite his challenges with the domestic economy as he watches the United States plunge into conflict with Iran. Donald Trump leaving China on the defensive and empty-handed is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters in France. New York Times reporter Michael Crowley is here with me for the hour. Political analyst and host of the Bulwark podcast, Tim Miller, is back. And back with me at the table, what could go wrong? Puck News senior political columnist, national affairs analyst John Heilman is here. Michael Crowley, you and your colleagues had an incredible live blog running, as well as some great reporting and analysis. I read some from David Sanger. And I honestly was homesick, and I kind of kept updating it to see if I was missing, like, the good news part of the trip. It was a pretty abysmal outcome for the United States of America and Donald Trump.
Well, Nicole, I'm just really marveling here at the point that you struck in that intro, which is the change in the president's tone toward China. And, you couple that with the fact that he launched a war in the Middle East with sort of unclear objectives that was aimed at regime change, a regime change war in the Middle East, and then went to China and praised its leader and took a pretty soft line approach toward the U.S.-China relationship. It's like makes me wonder what's going to happen next. Like, is Trump going to, give Hillary Clinton a job in his administration? It's just kind of amazing how flexible this president has become, to use a charitable word, or how dramatically he's reversed some of his past positions. And just as a footnote to this, although it's not Trump himself, I stumbled on something really interesting, which was that in 2015, Marco Rubio gave a big speech about China, attacking President Obama, and he stopped just short of saying that Obama should cancel a visit from Xi Jinping at the White House, because Rubio was saying that Xi was, committing atrocious crimes against humanity and oppressing his people, but said, Obama should not roll out the red carpet and basically not, treat him like his good buddy, because that's not how we treat authoritarian leaders like this. So, Rubio is part of this here also, and it's quite remarkable. Now, the last thing I would say is, look, if there's good news here, it's that we are not on the brink of a dangerous confrontation with China. I mean, a lot of people that national security experts were worried that we were in this kind of cycle of escalating rhetoric and threats between Washington and Beijing that could spiral out of control. And at least we're talking, because there are so many important things, including AI, where we've got to be on the same page. However, last point, the warning about Taiwan from Xi Jinping was kind of chilling. That remains a very dangerous flashpoint, and it's not clear to me how President Trump is thinking about that. So that remains a huge question mark out of all of this.
I mean, Trump said about Taiwan, would we want to be in a war 9,500 miles away, almost the same distance as Iran? I think people who watched Taiwan found the summit most ominous for the prospects of the Taiwanese and our alliance with Taiwan. I mean, doesn't this make actual aggression there far more likely or far more palatable from Xi's perspective?
Yeah, it may well. It's an incredibly complicated issue, that involves, among other things, this chip manufacturer on the island that no one can afford to see heavily damaged or destroyed, because this one, the whole global economy basically depends on this one factory. But maybe if Xi Jinping thinks that President Trump is not going to put up any kind of a fight, he can roll in and take it, and that makes it safer. I do think that what the president says and what he would actually do in a circumstance like that might not be the same thing. I just think it's very difficult to predict. Having said all that, I think that people in Taipei have got to be pretty freaked out right now about how President Trump is messaging, because you'll recall on several occasions when President Biden was asked what he would do if China made a move on Taiwan, Biden broke with official U.S. policy, which is to remain ambiguous and to say that he would come to Taiwan's defense. The White House walked it back, but Biden did it 3 times, which led me to believe that Biden was kind of playing a little bit of a wink and nod game there. Definitely not what Trump is doing.
Let me show you, because we're at a moment where Trump's approval rating drops a little bit every week, I want to show you how sort of the culture shapers assess the trip. This is from The Daily Show.
President Xi said that he hoped the two countries could avoid the so-called Thucydides trap. It's a historic reference about a great power being threatened by the rise of another.
Damn it, Xi! You're going to hit President Trump with a Thucydides trap? Now you're making his brain go up a flight of stairs. Come on, all right, President Trump. Don't let this guy history mog you. Show him you can communicate in equally sophisticated terms.
Chinese restaurants in America today outnumber the 5 largest fast food chains in the United States, all combined. That's a pretty big statement.
Yeah. That's my president. Putting his understanding of geopolitics into fast food terms. He gives a summit speech like a 3rd grader who got assigned China for his geography project. In conclusion, China is a land of contrasts, and I brought Panda Express for everyone.
So, Tim Miller, I think before Donald Trump started a war for which 9 to 17% of Americans feel supportive and enthusiastic about, these could be read as sort of elite things that Trump doesn't know anything. I think that now that his ignorance of geopolitical dynamics and his weakness on the world stage has cost the lives of 13 American service members and a war in Iran for which there's no explanation, no articulated end game, and gas is going up by the day. I think his weakness on the world stage is a different political calculation. How do you see this trip sort of fitting into an increasingly troubling narrative for him?
And Nicole, we're singing from the same hymn book like usual today, because that's exactly where I was going to go with this. I think that because of what is happening in Iran, like the whatever you want to call this, confab, the summit, the non-result of the summit is actually worse than what we just laid out, right? Like if you removed Iran from the equation, it would have still been a pretty humiliating summit. I mean, Trump ran on being a China hawk. He's got a lot of alleged China hawks around him, like Mike Waltz and Rubio, et cetera, as Michael Crowley pointed out. And instead, he goes there and just basically lies prostrate before Xi and talks about how hot and strong he is. And honestly, if you can imagine what Fox would do if any Democratic president would talk about this, they're just minute by minute, it would just be about how weak and humiliating and embarrassing the president is. And that's what our president is. He's extremely weak in the face of this negotiation. And so, like, that would be one thing if we were talking about, like, big picture, long-term geopolitical concerns, Thucydides trap, what happens with Taiwan in the future. But, like, we have this acute crisis right now. And China is simultaneously helping Iran somewhat in that crisis. They're also providing assistance to some of our putative allies in the region that now are dealing with shortages, in gas and other products such as that because of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. There have been multiple articles by Mike's colleagues at the Times and Wall Street Journal and others about experts about how China is taking this moment of our demonstrated weakness in Iran to kind of increase its footprint around the globe. And so, like, Trump goes there for this summit with kind of like the Iran war, with no clear objective, doesn't get anything out of it, and it happens amidst an ongoing conflict that we started that is exposing us as being very ineffectual on the world stage, and on top of that is harming people in our country and abroad. So it's just a total disaster class as far as I'm concerned.